So today we're going to talk about healthy boundaries and what it means for your village to have a boundary around it. So if you think of a physical boundary, it's what allows you to define where something or a place ends and where somewhere else begins. And it's the same with our own personal boundaries. The boundary around our internal village is like a protection or a gate that allows us to realize where we end and where other people begin. It also helps us to realize what's part of our village, so what we're responsible for, and what's actually not part of our village. So what we can't control, and therefore what we can't be responsible for because it's not in our control. And in this video, we're going to really focus on the different styles of boundaries. The different styles of boundaries are really go back again, like how the village was created. They go back to how we were brought up, the context in which we grew up. So the style of boundary that we have is very much influenced by the messages that we got from our caregivers and how they were in interaction with us. So ideally, a parent's role is to help a child get to know and be in their own village. So that can be done in the beginning, obviously, by taking care of all the child's needs because, when they're still a baby and they can't do that themselves. But as the child gets older and more independent, the role of the parent ideally is to help the child to understand, what do you want? What do you need? What are you feeling? And those kind of questions allow the child to get curious about and get to know their own needs. So that's the ideal situation. But often it doesn't happen that way. Often one of two things tend to happen. The first scenario is that the parent invades the child's village, and that can be like the very involved parent, the parent who almost creates a sense of dependency from the child on them. So makes the child feel like, I don't need to know what's happening in my village because my mom does everything for me. Or my dad keeps telling me what I should be thinking or feeling or wanting. And so there's no real choice that comes from that. It's almost like the parent has camped out in the child's village and the child doesn't learn in a way to trust themselves and to get to know what they want or what they need and who they really are as a person. And the second scenario is more about a parent who can be very self-involved and in a way forces the child to go into their village. So the child leaves their own village and learns to take care of other people, learns to kind of predict the parent's needs or what they want and try to adapt to it as much as possible. And that can be, going back to the example in an earlier video, people-pleasing behavior or caretaking, being the really responsible one. There's a term in psychology called being parentified, which is actually where the child takes on the role of the parent with a parent and learns to be responsible for the parent. And those are children who learn that I can't be in my own village because I always have to be in someone else's village. And so those are often the two types of boundary styles that we arrive in adulthood with. Either learning that, okay, it's safe for me to be in my own village. I can know what's happening for me, listen to my own needs, listen to my desires, to my wants, know what I'm thinking and feeling, and be able to ask for things, to express things in a healthy way. And I can say yes, no, or maybe in a way that feels in line with what I really want. That's having a healthy boundary style. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of adults that I've met that really have this style without having to work on it. And the more common styles are the two that I mentioned before. The first one being people who've learned to allow other people to go into their village. And as adults, those can look like quite needy people who don't do things on their own, who expect other people to take care of them, who sometimes end up in very controlling relationships because the other person has the opposite pattern of needing to take care of someone else. And so they can sort of be in this sort of child role where I don't need to take care of my own village, other people should take care of my own village. And this can be quite harmful in the long term because there isn't really a sense of self or who I am or what I want. It's more either by acting needy or by being kind of submissive all the time, other people love me or take care of me, or it can be a way of just not taking responsibility for our own lives. But again, not to be hard on ourselves, it does make sense because it's often comes with this pattern of having very invasive parents who didn't help us learn how to trust ourselves. And then the other style of boundary setting is really about going into other people's villages. And as adults, those can be really the caretakers, the super responsible ones, the ones who are very controlling as well, because they need other people to need them. And they can be quite manipulative as well. And it can even be a way of, I go into your village and take care of your needs in the hopes that you will take care of my needs in return. And that can be kind of an underhand way of trying to get our needs met when we didn't really learn how to do it otherwise as children. And so with these different ways of being in relationship and of having boundaries, it's important to recognize where you fit in. And a lot of us actually have all three styles of boundaries. We can have boundaries that are not strong enough. We can have boundaries that are sometimes quite solid in some situations, for example, at work, but not so much in our relationships. And we can sometimes go into other people's villages or let them invade our village. Or there might be a whole other style of boundaries where it's almost like we have a brick wall and nothing comes in and nothing gets out. And these tend to be quite emotionally cut off people who seem very independent, very able to be on their own, but often they can't really connect very well to other people. And this style of boundaries also is not very helpful in the long run because people tend to end up feeling quite cut off, not very connected, and tend to think that they should be able to do everything on their own and that it's not safe to let anyone in or to connect to other people. So those are all these different ways that we can have different styles of boundaries. And in the next video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how boundaries actually work using the village metaphor again.